Hi there, welcome to the Nonlinear video series. So today we have two nonlinear employees, Robin and Tanis, speaking with us about user experience and usability. So first I'm going to get both of them to introduce themselves. So Robin?
All right, so my name is Robin Bragg. I work out of the Nonlinear Ottawa office. I am an information architect and user experience designer. So my background is originally in psychology and graphic design, and I bring those two things together to make usable user interfaces and design wireframes and do usability testing and all that great user experience stuff for Nonlinear.
Perfect. And Tanis?
Hi, I'm Tanis Gibson. I work out of my home office in Edmonton, Alberta, where it's sunny and beautiful today. I have been with Nonlinear for 2 years now. But come from a background of, I have a Master's of Library and Information Studies, and I've worked with a large government agency and a large university here in Alberta. Generally, I play the role of product owner, so I am the person that will gather all the needs of the website, help Robin sort of plan them out, plan the usability and the interactions, and then I'll translate that for the dev team and keep the client in the loop. So that's generally my role.
Perfect. And just so everyone's aware, I'm Britt Mockler. I'm the marketing specialist here at Nonlinear, and I will be interviewing Robin and Tanis to find out more about usability and user experience. So the first question everyone's going to have is, what is user experience? Robin, would you mind telling us a bit more about it?
Sure. So user experience is a really broad field. It encompasses a lot of things. It's pretty much the goal of user experience is to make people's experiences online or with interfaces easier and more friendly and kind of effortless. So what we do is there's several stages to it. There's a research stage where you want to find out what kinds of things, both from the organization who's creating a website, what kinds of things you want people to come and do on your website, but also really putting yourself in the shoes of the user and think, well, as a user, what do users want to get from the website? And sometimes those things are the same as what the organization wants, and sometimes they're very different. We want to make sure that both sides get what they need out of the website. So that can involve lots of things. We can develop personas and think about who are the different kinds of people who are going to come and use the website. We do wireframing, which is thinking about how navigation systems work and how content is organized on the website, and then taking that to the next step and then doing the visual design. So how do we support the interactions and have the aesthetics support the functionality of the website and translate that to something that we then hand to the development team to implement.
Right. I think people often forget they go straight to all the pretty colors, right, Robin?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, let's just, let's get our graphics on there and it will be awesome. And they forget that it's little simple things like making buttons a different color, right? So if your call to action on a sign-up page is to get your user to sign up for your newsletter or for your account notices or whatever, versus having that additional information there to have the user log in. So, but the call to action, the thing you want them to do on that page is to sign up. Mm-hmm. Maybe that the treatment there is different than for the login, right? Because it's the secondary action.
Yeah, and definitely it's about thinking about prioritization, that you don't want to. People can get very overwhelmed very easily. So what is the primary thing that you want somebody to do on this particular page, and not overwhelming them with 14 different things to pay attention to.
Exactly.
Perfect. So now that we understand a bit about what UX usability is, what would you say are the main reasons that organizations that are developing new websites should invest in user experience and usability? Because as you know, it sometimes gets pushed to the sideline, again, like Katana said, for pretty colors and great design. But what is it that makes it a valuable part of a website?
Well, I think usability, frankly, can affect the bottom line, especially if you think of, say, an e-commerce website. If you go, say, you think of shopping cart experience, if there's something that's kind of tripping your users up in the shopping cart, if they're having trouble kind of completing that task, you can actually lose sales because of that. So lots of websites aren't necessarily selling something, but if you make things difficult for your user, they're probably going to go look somewhere else, and that might potentially be on a competitor's website. So you want to make sure that if you have primary goals for your website, be it providing information, being it providing, whether it's whatever it is, you want to make getting your users to that goal as easy as possible, and that will just ultimately support your organization's larger goals.
Right, and it could be, it could be reduced, it could be on a staff intranet, it could be reduced help desk calls, right? So you're finding cost savings because your user is able to complete whatever that task is without drawing on additional resources. So they can complete their task without involving a help desk person to complete that task, so doubling the staff time invested in the completion of that task.
Yeah,
right?
and the same thing that if you make, if the information becomes easier to find, somebody spends, 2 minutes finding the document they needed versus 10 minutes, so that just creates efficiency in the workforce, in an intranet situation.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So it all affects the bottom line, whether it's increased sales or decreased support. It all pays dividends, and it helps. I think really great user experience also builds trust for your organization.
Absolutely.
Right. So maybe they're not making that purchase that first time. Maybe your staff is they just want to check out the new policy or whatever. But it lays that sort of groundwork of trust. So they're not nervous about interacting with you and second guessing their choices.
Yeah, and definitely. And I think we've all had the experience of having a really, really frustrating experience on a website, and I think definitely that affects the perception of that company and that brand, because it ultimately makes you feel like, well, they don't care about me. They've set things up in a way that's good for them, but clearly they're not thinking about me at all, and that that sort of erodes that trust, as Hans was talking about.
On that subject, do either of you have any examples of UX faux pas that you see often, that you cringe at every time you see on a website? Robin, I think that you probably have a couple. I feel like we've probably talked.
My number one thing actually lately is the complete disregard for having a cohesive mobile experience. So if I am out and I'm in a store and I want to, double check the price, or I want to do something, and I'm like having to zoom in and zoom out and shift it up and shift it down, and like that, not being aware of how your customers experience on a mobile device is my number one pet peeve. And there's huge organizations where you get to their site on a mobile phone and you just think, like, I can't even find the closest location, and you just abandon it and say, fine, I'll use Google, I'll use where you really want to use their own website, and you can't.
It's missing out on opportunities.
Oh, it's totally missing out on opportunities. I mean, but then when it works well, I was at Chapters the other day, and all the little kiosks where you could look up books were busy, and I used the phone, and I knew what section it was in, and I knew how many copies they had in the store, because their mobile experience worked seamlessly. Yeah.
Excellent. What about you, Robin?
Yeah, I think it's when sites really don't think through sort of what your primary actions are going to be. I mean, I was dealing with, again, it was an app, but a phone app where it was trying to map out a route for buses, and literally I was just looking for the submit button, and it somehow was merged with the ad at the bottom. So like the submit button to actually say route and find out what the route would be was kind of hard to see. So like that, to me, that's sort of blindingly obvious. I mean, but I know that it isn't, but it's sort of, that's a pretty key task. And so for me, that's where usability testing becomes essential, that it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be sort of just handing this to somebody who's never seen it before and say, try to do this, and seeing how they do it. And it only takes 3 or 4 people. And if everybody says, it's not working, then you say, okay, I have a problem, and you can fix it. And so there's a lot of gain for very little effort there. So it's when they haven't taken the time to do that basic kind of usability testing, that's probably my
And Robin, we see this all the time, and I've seen it throughout my career. The first thing to get cut is any sort of testing.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, we don't have the budget. No, we don't have the time. So maybe we can talk about some of the different sort of from low fidelity to the highest fidelity types of testing, because it could be as simple as, a pizza lunch with a bunch of coworkers. So maybe you could sort of dive into some of those low to high fidelity.
Yeah, certainly the cheapest kind is exactly the pizza lunch, sort of what's called guerrilla usability testing, which is taking whatever you have in progress, whether it's some paper wireframes, whether it's work in progress, and just sitting some people down in front of it. I mean, ideally you want to use the same kinds of people who will be using it, but even just someone who hasn't been intimately involved in the process, it's very easy for all of us, no matter how smart we are, no matter how much we know our stuff, to kind of lose the big picture, and it all makes sense to us because we've all talked about it together, and from somebody from the outside sometimes it makes no sense whatsoever. Right. So just sitting people in front of it, that's the quickest and easiest. But you can also do, there's tools online where you can put up prototypes, or you can put up even just JPEGs of your comps and put up a few simple questions
and crowdsource it, right? So it's not targeted specifically to a specific audience that you've recruited, and you're just sort of putting it out there to the universe. And getting really brutally honest responses.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of online tools for this sort of what's called unfacilitated usability testing. And then the next step up is facilitated usability testing, which becomes a lot more formal. So that's where someone like Tanis or I will write a plan with a series of tasks, and we'll sit with users and we'll record, we'll have them in a computer where we can record what they're doing, and we monitor it, and we can then do all, it's recorded, so we can then go back and review it and do the analysis of the tasks. So that then becomes more expensive, but even then it only takes, there's studies that show that really if you test it with 5 people, you're going to get 80% of the usability challenges. So it only takes 1 or 2 things to really make a difference. Again, and especially if you're dealing with anything that e-commerce, or where there's sort of revenue, if your website is revenue generating, I think you're going to get a huge return on investment. You're probably going to pay for usability testing very quickly, because the things that you find will actually help you generate more revenue on your website.
You're going to make all the difference.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw a study about a company that was actually an e-commerce company, and their call to action was just in the wrong place, and they ended up changing it, and it boosted their sales like 100%.
Yeah.
So, if they had done usability testing beforehand, they would have known that that wasn't the best place for them to have that call to action.
Yeah, and that sort of goes to, then there's a whole other series of, even after your website launches, there's lots of sort of continuous improvement that you can do, and lots of, when we talk about, button placement, button color, you can do a lot of A/B testing. So you can, show users 2 different versions of the website randomly. Different users will see different versions, and you track, whether the
conversion,
whether they complete the action that you want to complete, and you can see which version performs better. So that's something that you can just do constantly and just continuously make your website better and better.
And there's news websites, and there's been studies, and you can Google it and you'll find it easily, where they A/B test headlines. So that's like rapid testing. They'll A/B test those headlines and then lock in on the one that's getting the most hit and move on. And they're doing that every single day.
Yeah.
Right? So, you don't maybe need to make that kind of investment, but you start to sort of see, maybe you're seeing right in your analytics, Robin, right? Like, you're sort of tracking this click path, or there's some goals and the users just aren't getting there. Then that's where you start introducing your A/B testing or your heat maps. Heat map tools are great to start fine-tuning that. And really, ideally, you're in a situation with a setup for your site that you can test those things and make those changes easily. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are stuck with hosting companies or whatever, and it's a monumental change, but at least then you start to develop the data
Yeah.
to justify those changes.
To make the decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. All right. Well, this was just an introduction to UX and usability. Obviously, you two could go on for an hour or 2 hours longer, but we'll call it to a close now. But if you do want to hear anything more about usability and UX, make sure that you check out our Nonlinear website. We have some great stuff there, and we'll be putting out some more in the future. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks.